Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a fantastic day so far. Today, I want to talk about the opportunities within the recruitment sector, especially because right now it feels like there are no opportunities when it comes to job listings, speaking to recruiters, and finding the job that you desire. Now, for me, my experience has heavily been based within the public sector pretty much my whole career. And so this is more focused on public sector spend as opposed to private sector. So, this is not necessarily for those individuals within that space. But if you're interested in the public sector, I've got a report from a company called Tussle, who are essentially a market intelligence specialist who provides insights to those individuals who can afford their proprietary software. I think it's like £9,000 to spend each year in order to get this market intelligence. So, of course, it's for those individuals or organizations that have the money. Now, they're based in London, and I'm sure there are probably a lot of the big four that use this market intelligence to procure or at least bid for different procurements or tenders. So if you don't know what a procurement or tender is, that is essentially a process an organization or group of organizations go through in order to be selected to deliver services on behalf of public sector organizations, as an example, or private sector organizations, as an example. So this is a whole market that exists beyond, just everything that you may see. And my argument is that this country heavily relies upon the services of small medium enterprises in addition to some of the services that some of these big four provide as well. But of course, we're seeing that being broken up and shaken up, especially with the new procurement laws that have come into play. So I'm going to be reading my screen. You won't be able to see my screen, but I'll be reading some insights from it as well. So the first thing to state is that when we think back to 2018 and 19, that financial year, this is pre-COVID, spend was about 2.8 billion. And just to be clear, this is the amount of money spent on procurement directly for recruitment within the public sector. Okay, so this would include a number of different sort of like recruitment organizations that were directly procured. So 2.8 billion. I don't know how much that is in terms of our total spend, but I know our total spend right now in 25-26 is 1.26 trillion. I think it's 26 anyway. So year on year, that has increased. Okay, so it's gone from 2.8 billion to 3.3 billion to 4.2 billion to 4.8 billion to 5.6 billion as of 22-23. Okay, so this is not necessary for 24-25, 23-24 and 24-25. Statistics for that will come a bit later on. But the point being made is from 2018 to 2023, at least March 2023, there has been an increase in spend. Even during the COVID years, the argument could be made that actually COVID years accelerated it. And if we think about 2020 to 2021, spend went from 3.3 billion to 4.2 billion, an increase of roughly 25% I see here. Okay, from previous years, whatever it may be. So there's a lot to take on board here. What is like pushing this activity? Why is this happening, etc., etc.? Typically, what I like to do is I like to look at the sort of autumn budgets and the spring budgets to get a breakdown of what the government is focusing their attention on. And that kind of gives you an idea in terms of what it is. But again, we've got some statistics here. So if we look at it, in general, the biggest spend is centered around local government. So if you don't know what local government is, that's anything to do with local authorities and anything to do with the local communities per se. Then next from that is the NHS. That's the next biggest spender. And then from that, you've got central government. So central government may include things like Department of Health and Social Care, Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Department for Business, Energy, etc., etc. You get the idea. So it's all the departments. I think there are 40 odd different departments. And then part of a really small sort of like fraction, you have transport. It says blue light here, which I'm not sure what that is, and other. So you can see all this money is being thrown into local government heavily, then into the NHS, and then central government. So those are sort of the areas where you start to look for opportunities. And this has been consistent throughout 2018-19 to 22-23, and I'm sure that it's probably been similar there onwards as well. So the next sort of thing to look at is who are the top players, okay? When talking about top players, we're talking about the top recruitment agencies that are involved in these procurements, who are winning these bids, who are winning these contracts. So you'll know already, whether you're part of the, I'm going to say, public sort of like job market or the hidden or shadow job market, it's still going through the same process. So these individuals or these organizations will complete these bids or tenders for certain services, and they will make promises to their end client organization that they can bring in talent that can deliver on X work. And so they need to be, they need to have certain criteria sort of like down in terms of their organization. So they may have cybersecurity essentials potentially, or ISO 27001, or they may have certain recruitment sort of like associations, or accreditations, and all this kind of stuff there. And of course, these recruitment agencies are on frameworks, okay? So the same frameworks these consultancies use, they're probably on similar frameworks. So you may have heard something like RM 6160, okay, as an example, for those of you who may know. So once they're on these frameworks, once they've set themselves up, then they bid for these works, okay? And of course, a recruitment agent may be better versed at talking to you about this stuff, but essentially that's what happens in a nutshell. And then they have available to them the opportunity to bring in these different talent, okay, essentially. Now, sometimes the organization may still accept or allow other agencies to find talent for them because they're desperate, but really they have a dedicated person. And this is why sometimes there is a shadow sort of like job market for situations like this. And this is why it's good to have relationships with recruiters, okay, checking with them every quarter or so. So if we look at 2018, 2019, and then I'll just sort of like skip over to 22, 23 after I've gone through the list. In 2018, 2019, the top recruitment agency was Matrix, followed by Reed, which was number 2. Then we have Impellum, okay. Then we have Hayes, Adecco, AMS, 2020 Capital, Acacium Group. We've got Pertemps and Mawson. So that is the list from 1 to 10. If we go to 2022-23, we have Matrix on top again. Then we have AMS, so that's Alexander Mann. So for anyone who's sort of like done the whole public sector resourcing, so PSR recruitment for inside IR35 roles mainly, they are under Alexander Mann. Then you've got Reed, number 3, Impellum 4, Hayes 5, Acacium Group 6, 2020 Capital 7, Pertemps 8, Adecco 9, and Manpower 10. So maybe these are the places or spaces you need to be looking. Okay, maybe those top 5. Whether you're looking for inside of IR35 roles, outside of IR35 roles, these organizations from a contracting standpoint provide them. But of course, some of them provide permanent roles too, so you can check that for yourself. Obviously, Reed does. I think Adecco does as well, and a few others. So this kind of gives you an idea in terms of like how they rate each other in terms of how much spend is being sort of like placed on these different recruitment agencies. And if you break it down even more, okay, let's look at Matrix as an example, the Matrix agency. A lot of their spend is heavily focused on local government, central government, and blue light. Again, I don't know what blue light is, but central government and local government. Okay, so remember, they're one of the top ones. So that says something in terms of opportunities. Now, it's interesting because you've got them having a lot of spend with local government, central government, and blue light, but it's similar for other sort of like organizations, such as Reed, okay? Hayes is another one. You've also got Acacium Group. You've got 2020 Capital. You've got Adecco. So, this is talking to their volume. So there is a volume of about, it says here, top 10 recruitment suppliers by direct public sector revenue and their volume of buyer relationships by buyer type. So volume 70 for Matrix, Reed is 138, Hayes is 176, all this kind of stuff there. So local government's a big one. It's a very big one. I would say the next big hitter is probably the NHS, and close to that would be central government. Okay, so these are things to look out for. Now, other things to sort of like check out is, again, if you break it down even more so, what different areas are getting the most spend when it comes to recruitment. So the biggest, 168 million in 22-23, was spent on network, rail and infrastructure. Okay. Next from that was Birmingham City Council, 136 million. Then you have Department for Work and Pensions, 134 million. You got UKHSA, so I've worked for them as well, 131 million. NHS England worked for them as well, 122 million. Obviously, they're no longer. So that money is going to be spread out probably to the Department of Health and Social Care. Hint, hint. You got Home Office, 120 million. TfL, 119 million. DEFRA, I've worked for them as well, a subsidiary of them, 112 million. Barts Health NHS Trust, 61 million. London Underground. So if you see these opportunities, you know, or you see these organizations, you know there may be opportunities within this space. Okay, I could keep on going on and on and on, but it's just really good to see what sort of opportunities there are. Now, I think the final thing that I'm going to do, because I want to break it down a little more, I don't want to talk about anything that's going to be confusing, is break down what sort of things, what sort of like stuff these different sectors are looking for, so to speak. So again, this is for 2022-23, but of course this is going to be year end for 24, hence why it's relevant. For central government, okay, the top 5 things they were looking for includes managing temporary and permanent recruitment, non-clinical and temporary fixed term staff, so that's the sort of people they're looking for. There was also public sector resourcing awards, so this is public sector services, i.e. inside IR35 contractors, digital technology services, and clinical and healthcare staffing frameworks. Okay, so that was the sort of stuff that was being sought after, so to speak, based on the tenders that were out there. So that's for central government, the department of this and all of that kind of jazz there. For local government, again, you have managed services for temporary agency resources, number 1. Then you have managing temporary and permanent recruitment. So that's both temporary and permanent people they were looking for. Then you got managed services. Then you got non-clinical and temporary fixed term staff. And then you have strategic HR services, number 5. Okay. So this range between 1 million to 154 million in terms of spend. And this is roughly across the board as well. And for the NHS, specifically what they were looking for is non-clinical and temporary fixed term staff. So this is your managers, project managers, admin, all of that kind of stuff. Clinical and healthcare staffing framework. Okay, so clinical members of staff, because of course there is a shortage in nurses and midwives. You got flexible resource pool staff bank, which is common. National and international permanent recruitment solutions, which is interesting, maybe something to do with research potentially, and then permanent recruitment. So what does this all mean? It means that if you are looking for roles, okay, and it fits within sort of like this bracket, there are definitely opportunities within the local government scene. So maybe that's something you need to explore a bit more, speak to friends who work within the space, understand what it's about. There may be spaces within the NHS, okay, and that's a broad thing. Even the health and social care environment, which links to local government, is connected in many ways. And then central government. And there are so many things around central government, whether that is defense, which is going up in terms of spend, energy and business, when it comes to agriculture and the environment, whether it comes to health, all of these different facets of stuff are potentially things you can sort of lean into. Now, of course, if you're happy as a privately employed member of staff, then different scenario. But if you're contracting or you're consulting, maybe this is something to look into in terms of opportunities. Maybe you can align it to what the budget is in terms of what Rachel Reeves was speaking about, etc., etc. So hopefully this gives you a neat idea of what potential opportunities are out there. Yes, I know this information is outdated, and any information is outdated per se, but I received this last year, I think the tail end of last year. And I thought I'd share this just to give you some insights. And it'd be interesting to know if you have noticed any of this stuff. Before I continue, if you want to see insights in relation to portfolio careers and consulting, contracting, all that kind of stuff there, then join my newsletter below, where I send out a newsletter every single Sunday at 2 p.m. Now, recently, we just heard that the economy had grown by 0.5%. So there is some productivity we're seeing within the economy, which is a really good thing. Now, 0.5% may not seem much, but we weren't seeing much before anyway. And so if that is the case, maybe the sort of economy we've been seeing in terms of recruitment isn't as dire as it seems. However, let's recognize the fact that the tariffs that are happening at the moment are causing some turmoil in terms of affordability for organizations. Let's not forget that there's going to be increased pressure for Rachel Reeves and the government to ensure that people are working and they don't raise taxes, which they're probably going to do at some point after the 90 days of the tariffs, because they won't be able to afford certain things. Let's not forget that there are individuals who need jobs, and because the sort of like cost of living crisis is high and there is, I'm going to call it stagflation in terms of wages, not even stagflation, the wages haven't grown, so to speak, in line with inflation, then there's going to be increased competition. So I recognize all of this stuff. So it really comes down to, what you're able to do. It's not purely based on you. A lot of it is luck also. But you increase your probability if you have the experience, of course, 5 to 10 years. You can validate that through value, CVs, what you say, articulation, etc., etc. If you build the right relationships in the shadow market, this is when you speak to the recruiters yourself, as opposed to relying on recruiting via X, Y, and Z. And you're doing well when the recruiters are contacting you, okay? Whether that is a submission through, CV library, or they're ringing you to say, oh, just want to see if you're available. So this hopefully gives you some insights. Anyway, let me know what topics you'd like to see in relation to this specific topic, or any other topic that you think would be useful to know about. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.